Welcome to this edition of the Whole Health with Rob Carney podcast. I'm your host, Rob Carney of Whole Health Connections. So in today's episode, we have Eric McMullen, who is the co-owner of the natural food store in Searcy, Arkansas. He's also a nutritionist, a holistic lifestyle coach with Cell-to-Soul Health Therapies. So he's been a nutrition consultant since 2012, and Eric has dedicated his time and energy to study health and healing from a wide variety of disciplines. To name a few: herbalism, mycology, nutrition, tai chi, exercise science, and much more in order to help people recover and rebuild their health. So Eric currently holds a Master of Education degree. He is a certified health coach, clinical nutritionist, and weight loss consultant, and is also, like myself, a level 2 holistic lifestyle coach from the Chek Institute. So Eric and I met out at our level 2 HLC training in San Diego, California, at the Chek Institute. So we had a chance to chat out there. Obviously, he's a very interesting guy from an area like Arkansas, which is not as in touch with a lot of the latest holistic health ideas and practices as other areas like California, Denver, and many other poppin' areas in the holistic health world. So Eric is going to be on the podcast today sharing his experience being a pioneer really in the Arkansas area and sharing holistic health and healing with his community. So I hope you enjoy this podcast, and here we go. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest, Eric McMullen. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
So as we introduced you, you do a lot. I mean, you're in the Arkansas area. That's what I would believe to be an underutilized area in the world of health. I think you're probably a pioneer in that from what I would gather. I mean, I've only been to Little Rock, Arkansas once for one day when I was driving back from LA. And I honestly love the city. It was a beautiful, beautiful little city. Actually reminded me of Boston, kind of right along the river there. So I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful little city. But definitely I would imagine that the health awareness there is not as high as somewhere like the Californias, the Denver's, the East Coast. So what's your story, man? How did you get into the world of health, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, yeah, man, I like to think of myself as a pioneer. I think a lot of people would argue with me on that, but in my daily affirmations, I think that's something I'd say. I will say the joke is that Arkansas is about 10 years behind everybody else, which is, I mean, that's good and bad. It does mean if you keep current and you keep with the flow of what's going on, then you seem like you're a pioneer, even though you may not be. But man, it's Arkansas is hot right now, man. I don't know, how's it like there in Boston?
Yeah, it's cooling down a bit. It's down to the 80s, but the health world is hot. The health world is up and coming. We're definitely, I'd say we're usually just a couple years behind the trends. I mean, you kind of start with the Californias, the Denvers, and we're right up there. I mean, I'd say we're about three or so years behind them, typically in terms of health trends. I mean, legalized marijuana is now a thing here, so it's definitely, we're up and coming in terms of being in the general field of health, but we're usually a few years behind pioneering states.
Yeah. Well, and I one of the cool things about Arkansas is because it is, especially where I'm at, I'm not even really that near Little Rock. It's very rural, and people have pretty strong community values, and that's taught me a lot living here. So I'll just launch into your question, which is kind of how I got into this. I had no idea that I would be in this field. It's not something that I thought I'd be in growing up. I I didn't really give much consideration to health growing up. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s and I got super depressed and had a lot of anxiety that I started paying attention to health. And, I basically, I got out of a pretty bad, it wasn't a bad relationship. it was unhealthy, and I was unhealthy in it, and I think I gained a lot of my own identity from that relationship. And so when it dissolved, I was like, I don't know what my life's about. I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I was a pretty broken person, emotionally, spiritually, physically. I'm a slender 6'2" guy, and I'd gotten down to almost 130 pounds. I felt like a walking ghost, and and like there's a lot of doctors and practitioners and people in our field that develop a passion out of a pretty beat up, broken place. And so I joined that ranks, man. I got into this out of losing my health altogether, and it was an uphill battle for me, but I developed a real love for it, and really I had to change everything from what I ate to how I moved, my priorities and values. I certainly, a big part of me getting out of the ditch emotionally was changing what I thought about God and how I viewed God. And, I kind of grew up feeling like God, always believing in a God, always believing there was a God, but always just kind of believing God was slightly disappointed with me all the time. Just when I hit rock bottom, I just thought it was nearly just the punishment of God in my life. I didn't even know what I was disobeying. I just knew this is just not right, and I'm a failure here. I had to reframe and stop believing in that kind of a God for me to get healthy. And I did, man. And I haven't believed that since. And it's been a huge part of my transformation. I started getting into organic farming as far as my interest. And then I've always been somebody just with a pretty insatiable knowledge for science and whatever I'm into at the time. So what I do now is I would say it's probably equal parts loving to help people and loving to dig into the science of this stuff. And I couldn't do it without, it sounds more selfish to be like, I just really like to learn this stuff. But if it weren't for that, I couldn't stay with it. And I do feel like that burden, that healthy burden of like just having a dream in my heart, just to develop this kind of relationship with my body. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common trend within the people in our community. I think it's often the pain teacher that teaches us a lot of these lessons. Once we hit that point of rock bottom or close to rock bottom or whatever we want to use for terminology, but just that feeling of pain and that realization of, I never want to go back here, and I don't want other people to experience this themselves. So for me, I mean, a lot of the people listening to this have probably heard my story. So this started for me when I had a concussion when I was about 17 years old. And at the time I was a three-sport athlete, state swimmer. So that kind of knocked me back quite a bit, where I couldn't really do much physical activity for about 5 months. And it was kind of figuring stuff out, and then got into yoga. And again, I'll say to listeners this story, but it all kind of just spiraled from there, where it started with, I'll call it a tragedy, but it was one of the best tragedies that's ever happened to me, because again, we're sitting here today because of that. And it sounds like you had a very similar thing with depression, anxiety, and this feeling of not being enough, not being good enough, doing something wrong. And again, I think that really just helps us in our profession of just helping other people, because we know what it feels like to be in a place where we don't feel our best. We feel like shit. We feel depressed, anxious, whatever it may be. We know that we have the tools, we have the experience at this point to help people become the best versions of themselves, whatever those goals are. And I think it's interesting too, because a lot of people, the definition of health is something that I think varies quite a bit. So I would love to hear what your thoughts and your definition of health is for yourself or for the other people, or what is your definition of health?
Yeah, that's really, it is the found. I don't always tell people when I'm meeting with them what my definition of health is, but it's always there in every person I meet with, in all my health coaching sessions, whether I'm doing weight loss counseling or diabetes counseling, nutritional counseling, how I feel about health, or really what it means to be well, or just wellness, is it kind of started with, it started with the Paul Chek video, which a lot of things in my life started with the Paul Chek video. But he kind of reframed my definition of health and said that, I'm going to butcher his, but I kind of took his definition and made it my own, so to speak. And I don't think he'd mind doing that. He'd mind me doing that. But he basically said that health or wellness is, it's an honest willingness to engage in relationship with your body, mind, spirit, to accomplish the goals and dreams that are in your life, and considering the challenges to be a necessary step in that. And so the way I like to say that is that it's an honest willingness to be in relationship. I would say, we all know that relationship is the essence of life, man. It's in every relationship you have a giving and a receiving, and I see that mirrored in the concept of the Tai Chi symbol and the yin and the yang. I think you could put giving and receiving right in there, and so I would say for us to be healthy, for us to live in wellness, it's just an honest willingness, because we can lie to ourselves and other people all day, to engage in that relationship, first and foremost with yourself. But I do believe that there's 4 primary relationships, and I've taught classes on this, but it's a big part of what I believe. There's 4 relationships that I'd call the great relationships of life. And those 4 relationships are our relationship with God, our Creator, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with others, and our relationship with the earth. And, on one sense, I would say that you don't always have to make those distinctions of, there being 4 relationships, because we're all part of the same. You could say that we're all one. I like the idea of universe, breaking that into its parts. Universe meaning one song. We're all part of the same, and we all belong. We're all made of the same stuff, essentially. But for us to be individuals, I think for us to have an ego, you've got to separate these things out. For me to be a separate entity, and to be able to give you love and receive love from you, we've learned that I have to be my own, even though I belong to you in a certain way. God included. We all have the divine spark in us, but one of my favorite theologians, Richard Rohr, are you familiar with his stuff at all?
I am not, no.
No, man, he's got some great stuff out there. But Richard Rohr says, we're a part of God, and but there is the difference is that he is the includer, or God is the includer, and we are the included. So we're included in God, but we are not the includer. So the four great relationships are that we are in relationship with our Creator. We're in relationship with ourselves. We're in a relationship with other people, and that we're in a relationship with Earth. And to the degree that we engage in those relationships, that is what health is. I mean, you think of this one, and being in Arkansas, I see it all the time. When you don't consider your relationship with the earth to be a loving relationship that you're in, then your health breaks down, man. I mean, and especially from where I was at, when I was so fallen in the ditch as far as my health was, man, my relationship with myself was horrible. I basically would say things and think things about myself that I'd feel terrible if I said them or thought them about somebody else.
Definitely.
And, from the foods that we're willing to take in, I think our willingness to engage in those four great relationships are, that's central to the idea of our health. And the cool thing is, when we learn something about loving in any one of those relationships, we learn something about love in all of our relationships.
I think that's a very important distinction there too, is I think that the one thing I really like about that Paul Chek always says is the I, we, all. So we focus on loving ourselves first, being the I, and then we can share that love with the people closest to us, whether it be our close friends, our family, and then we can just share it with the greater community. But as you just mentioned, I think it's very important to distinguish that by helping all these things together, working all these things together, if I help the planet, I am helping the next person to eat that food. And by helping this person make an educated choice, they're then helping the planet, because now they're more conscious and aware of their decisions. So it really is just a whole interconnected system that it's a ripple effect. And I think that
that's right.
We tend to believe that maybe our action is too small to make a difference. But as you just stated, I mean, or what you were sharing earlier about organic farming, that's something that, I mean, you plant some organic food at your house. One, you're supporting the organic companies, first of all. Two, you're putting more healthy soil into the planet. And three, you're creating more healthy food for the people. So it's this whole interconnected approach that it seems like you're just making one small decision, but it's really supporting the entire ecosystem at large. And I think that's where your idea of health is very important. That, again, we can only be as healthy as our soil, and our soil is only going to be as healthy as we are, because we're the ones making the decisions. We are the stewards of the land. So by working together and really just having this appreciation that we are so connected, I think that's a very healthy perspective to have. That I'm glad that you're sharing that. Again, we all Chek practitioners, we tend to think in very similar terms, that we do have this opportunity and this awareness that we are so connected. So sharing that message, I think, is very important. And again, the health of you affects the health of me, and the health of me affects the planet. So again, just sharing this message of connectedness, I think, is a very important message for us to all really take into consideration.
Well, yeah, it blew me away the first time that I heard that we've got 100 trillion bacteria that live in us.
Yeah.
And the first time I read about that, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I think the author said we're more microbe than we are mammal, and that we're a living community. That blew me away. But you think about how fresh it's fresh to me, at least, and it's fresh to a lot of people. The science is behind that. We thought, okay, we've got bacteria in our guts, and but the rest of us should be free of microbes. And then we find that we've got a microbiome on our skin and on our in our blood, in our lungs, and everywhere. But we thought, you know what, our brains and and for pregnant moms, the placenta, those are sterile environments. Those are bacteria-free zones. You got the blood-brain barrier. You don't have things passing into the placenta. But sure enough, I came across an article, maybe it was a couple months ago, it was by Dr. Kelly Brogan, that they found recently that healthy brains contain the same types of bacteria that are found in our gut. These aren't diseased brains. These are a healthy brain tissue. In your brain, you've got tons of beneficial bacteria. And what's more than that, are you familiar with the theory that that our mitochondria are basically co-evolved bacteria cells?
Yes, but I would love for you to share a little bit more of that with the audience.
Well, I know a little bit about it, enough to be dangerous, but basically it's this prevailing theory that mitochondria, which if you remember back to 8th grade biology, is sort of the powerhouse, the power plant for each cell. And, in every human cell, the cell that makes your toenails, you may not need that much mitochondria or power potential, but there's areas of your body that are more densely packed. The cells are with mitochondria, like your prefrontal cortex is chock full of them. But the idea is that the mitochondria in each cell are bacterial in nature. So we basically, if that's true, and I don't have any problems believing that, in every cell of our body is a bacterial blueprint. And I think bacteria and microbes themselves are just synonymous with the earth. So basically, we're inside out the earth. And, we've had a medical model for 150 years where it's bacteria is the enemy and it's us against them. And then we find out that there's bacteria blueprint in every cell in our body, and that there's more bacteria than human cells in us, and we're just trying to kill them all off. In essence, it's this breakdown of loving relationship between us and the earth. And man, it's humbling. It's humbling to know that I am the earth and the earth is me. So you go ahead, man.
Yeah, I think too that's a very important piece to remember when it comes to something like organic farming, is that we're having a lot of these soil microbes that are actually, a lot of them are very beneficial to the human system. And a lot of some people say that if you can find some good dirt, you might want to eat that. I'm not recommending people listen to this go out here and eat some dirt, but there's a lot of studies out there that show a lot of the microbes, as you said, we are the earth is us, and we have very strikingly similar bacteria that are in us that are in the earth. So something like conventional farming, where we're killing all the bacteria, we're raising animals with antibiotics, which we won't even get into how that affects us, but just the fact that we're losing a lot of these microbes that are actually very beneficial to us because of this war on bacteria that we've really waged on. Because obviously there are very powerful destructive bacteria out there, just like anything. But the majority aren't destructive bacteria. Most of them are actually pro-life. They're beneficial to our life. I mean, probiotics, that word itself, it's pro-life. It's for life itself. It helps us become humans, and it helps us thrive at the optimal level. So it's just interesting to me how we've kind of really lost that connection. It definitely seems that with the rise in awareness of our antibiotics and probiotics, that we're starting to come full circle again and realizing that a lot of these things that we've been trying to wipe out are actually good for us, and we kind of went a little overboard, which is not an uncommon
well, and we've got to have grace for ourselves too with that. We were going on our, I've got grace for the fact that people used to just put leeches on themselves to get out the dirty blood. That's what they knew. That's the best thing that they knew. But it's time to grow up, in our understanding. Now that we know that we are a human community, we are an I, but we are a we. That now that we know that, it's time to grow up and see the world differently. I've also heard the analogy that our bodies are like communities, and things like viruses and bacteria, even if they're pathogenic bacteria, fungus, parasites, some of those are they're like the artists in the community. They bring they bring some diversity and life to the community. Now, you don't want them running the show. You don't want them to be the mayor. You don't want them to be the police force, but you want them in your community. Every community needs those type of characters, and it's just it's us finding balance and harmony.
Definitely, and it's funny because the way I kind of view it is there are weights, there are dumbbells, are barbells, where we need to be working with them, using them, because I mean the healthy ones, they need that balance, they need that contrast to grow stronger, because obviously the quote unquote bad bacteria are going to kill off the weak good bacteria. So it's kind of it's like gym. It's like our guts need this exposure to some of these, again, I'm going to put this in air quotes, bad bacteria. But in reality, they're the dumbbells. They're the dumbbells of our gut that we need that to have some challenge, to have, again, survival of the fittest type of mentality with the gut biome. So when we're wiping down everything with our bacterial killing wipes, putting all this stuff, hand sanitizer on everything, again, the idea is good that we're trying to protect ourselves, but the execution is awful in most cases. I mean,
that's right.
I don't use sanitizer unless I've touched something that I think could make me ill if I got that inside my body. I don't think I've used sanitizer in years. And if I have, it was probably by accident because I thought it was a soap dispenser. But my point being is that, again, we need this contrast. And as you said, every society needs that. And that's where, again, just with our human system, taking this metaphor from the gut to the human body, we need to be challenging ourselves. We need to be exposing ourselves to things that make us uncomfortable, things that we break down our muscles so they grow stronger. And it's just finding that balance, because we don't want to destroy our muscles to the point where they're torn and they're never going to repair. And same thing, we don't want to be exposing ourselves intentionally to these harmful bacteria, but just finding that balance of, like, the 80-20 rule of what most people say is just kind of what we're looking for. We want to find that balance of finding the resistance, but not letting that compromise our whole system.
That's right on. I'm not arguing, and neither are you, that we need to go around licking playground equipment and ATM machines. It's just like, there's some wisdom there that we need to borrow, but it just means that now that revelation is here, that we are a community. We've got to change the way that we live. We've got antibiotics in our water. We've probably got antibiotics in the air we breathe sometimes, just in some of the things that are sprayed, especially in rural areas like where I live. We've got it in our foods. We inject it into our animals. We inject it into the plants that there's no place untouched by antibiotics, and we've got to grow up and think a little bit differently about this.
Definitely, I agree. And one thing I liked there, you kind of mentioned, was the community. So I want to segue into your community there in Arkansas. So you are the co-owner of the Natural Food Store in Arkansas. So what does that community look like? Because, again, as you mentioned, Arkansas is, in your words, is 10 years behind the trends of health. So what does your Natural Food Store look like in Arkansas, and what type of community do you have there?
Well, yeah, and let me, for anybody around here that listens to this, I'm not hating on Arkansas when I say that. I think that in some way to be 10 years behind the rest is a really great thing. Again, kind of like becoming a health coach, I had zero plans of ever owning a health food store. I mean, once I got sort of out of the ditch health wise, I wanted to help people regain their health. And so fortunately, I was able to get on working with formerly, during that time, I was a teacher. I was a language teacher. I taught Spanish and English as a second language. And man, I just couldn't cut it as a teacher. I just wasn't suited for it. I mean, I'd come up with my lesson plans on the way to school, and that's just not the way you're supposed to do it. So I went to work for this health food store that was doing nutritional counseling, and I felt like just this really good presence of of like-mindedness at this store, that the natural food store that it had been around since '91. And I came here about 8 years ago, and just had the opportunity to buy into it. I never thought I'd own a store, but man, it's been a wonderful, life-changing thing, and I wouldn't change it at all, because even though I'm not really fitted, my mind's not really fitted for business. I'm not business minded, but I love being able to participate in our community here in a positive way according to my values. I mean, if I worked for a big corporation or like Coca-Cola or something like that, even if I was making great money, there would be a dissonance in my life with the values that I have and what I believe. And but no dissonance with where I'm at, man. We are able to provide healthy goods and services for the people in our community. It is a people-centered place, where our staff here, you can come in here, you can talk to us, you can cry on our shoulder. That happens quite a bit, because when people's health is at stake, it's a very vulnerable time for them. And people just come in here and laugh with us, cry with us. It's awesome. I've gotten to know and become friends with the local farmers here. I would just encourage everybody that's listening, one of the things, if you want to get healthy, get to know the farmers around your area. I know you can buy everything in the world online these days, but when you buy something, and I'm not against buying something online, I really am not, but it takes the relationship out of it. If I can look the person in the eye who is growing the food that I'm going to eat, or raising the animals that I'm going to eat, there is something wonderful and engaging to that is unlike anything else. And through owning this store, or co-owning this store, I'm a 50-50 partner with somebody who is really good at business, so it makes that for me not being great at business. We've made wonderful relationships with people in this community. And as somebody said recently, if we take care of each other, we can't fail. You know, if I take care of the farmers that are doing things the right way, and then they're taking care of me because they're growing the food right, and there's people down the road making, that are beekeepers, and they're raising their bees, and I'm buying their honey, and then they're buying stuff at my store. You can't fail in a system like that. There's hiccups, there's challenges, but like you said, the kind of challenges you face in a community like that are like dumbbells. I was thinking when you were saying that, are you familiar with the hormetic effect?
The hormetic effect. I feel like I've heard of it, but I cannot say I'm familiar.
Well, I'll jog your memory on it. It's in medicine they consider hormesis anything that is a stressor on the body, but produces a beneficial result. When we send these guys that are in incredible shape, 25 or 30-year-olds into space, like these astronauts, they come back in 6 weeks with osteoporosis. Why did that happen? Well, when they get away from gravity, which is a stressor on our bodies 24 hours a day, we find out that we need some stress in our life. We need exercise. Working out is a wonderful hormetic effect. If you were to measure the inflammation in somebody that's right after a hard workout, man, just they're so inflamed. Their body is, under a great deal of stress. But when your body reacts to that stress, it's very good for you, and it produces a wonderful effect. I think that's happening in our communities, and it's taught me a ton. Trying to own a small business and to try to keep an attitude of, man, there's plenty to go around. Competition is we got to grow up past competition. I say that to myself because I can fall into that trap. But man, if we take care of each other, we can't fail. And I love working with the communities and everything right now.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's one way that I'm really working towards too, is trying to forget about competition and work towards collaboration. I think that's where these conversations are so beneficial. We have two people with very different lifestyles in terms of living in different parts of the world, very different experiences, but very similar viewpoints and thoughts about life and health in general. So I'd love to wrap this up. Where can people find you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you? How can they work with you? Where's you have social media, website? What's the best way for people to get?
Yeah, well, and me being a small business owner, it's easy to find me. I'm here at the small business. You can find me at the Natural Food Store in Searcy, Arkansas. You can also online, through our webpage, Natural Food Store, through Facebook, through Instagram. Find me on there. I run the health coaching practice, which I'm working towards dividing that out a little bit. And so we'll have our own separate website and all that kind of good stuff. But for right now, everything, if you want to find me, you can filter it all through the Natural Food Store in Searcy, Arkansas. And this is where I'll be helping people the best I can and trying to improve my relationship with myself and other people around here.
Awesome. Well, Eric, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on here, and we're looking forward to chat with you further in the future.
Yes, sir. I love what you're doing, Rob, and you make me jealous online. I'm like, I want to be with Rob on top of mountains doing Tai Chi. So next time you're on some kind of U.S. crusade, man, you need to shoot me a message, and I'll try to join you doing Tai Chi on top of mountains.
Sounds good, brother. Well, I'm looking forward to that day, and I'll talk to you very soon.
All right, man. Thanks, Rob.
All right, talk soon. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Whole Health with Rob Carney podcast with our guest, Eric McMullen. So as we mentioned, Eric is the co-owner of the Natural Food Store in Searcy, Arkansas. So you can reach him at the Natural Food Store Facebook page, at their website, and as well as if you're in the area, please stop by. He'd be more than happy to chat and share all the great stuff that he's doing with you in person. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by our organic superfood products. So the two companies that I have been lucky enough to partner with and have chosen to work with for their stewardship towards the planet and their top quality products are Purium and Mushroom Revival. So if you go to ishoppurium.com and use the code WHOLEHEALTH, that's WHOLE health, all one word, you will save $50 off your first order when you spend $75 or more. So when you head on to iShopPurium.com, put in that whole health code, and again, you'll save $50 on your first order for some of the top products, and they will be the first company to be 100% plastic free by 2021. And then we have Mushroom Revival. So Mushroom Revival is owned by my good friend Alex Dorr. So Alex is also a great steward of the land, and he makes incredible medicinal mushroom products. So with the same code, Whole Health, you will save 15% off your every order. So you can use that every time you order products there. And just like Purium, he is also a steward of the land. So he plants one tree for every product sold. And currently with the devastation that's happened in our rainforest, he has tripled that effort. So every product sold by Mushroom Revival this time will plant 3 trees in the Amazon. So thank you again for listening, and you can find those products at mushroom-revival.com and iShopPurium.com. And again, use the code WHOLEHEALTH for your savings. Thanks again for listening, and looking forward to future episodes.